welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here. Check out the series. Of course, you know what to do. If you like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists. And I'm so excited because one of my new favorite artists, Laufey, is here with a brand new record called Bewitched. Hello.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I've become such a fan this year, especially hearing, well, the single from the start and this record, and we've been playing it so much at WFPK here in Louisville. But first, I just want to say congratulations because you have made such a wonderful piece of music.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Really does.
Well, it's, I know we're still kind of getting to know you. You've been around, several years now, but as we're just getting acquainted around here, I would love to hear a little bit of the background too, because I think you're mostly known at this moment for operating a bit in the jazz world, although there's these elements of sort of everything that come through in your music. But where did that come from? I mean, was jazz a natural sort of path for you, or was that a decision?
Yeah, so I grew up just in classical music. My mom's a violin teacher, and she plays in the Iceland Symphony as well. So, and her parents were also, my grandparents were also classical musicians. So I kind of, I grew up in a very classical household, and I started playing piano when I was 4 and cello when I was 7, and kind of completely dedicated my life to this pre-professional classical music vacuum, if you will. And I loved it very much, but I loved singing more. And I started singing when I was like 11 or 12. My dad loved jazz music, and he would play a lot of jazz music in the house while I was growing up. So I had always like a lower kind of voice. And as much as I loved pop music and new music, I kind of heard a little bit of myself, or more of myself, in the jazz singers of that era. So like the Ella Fitzgeralds and the Billie Holidays and the Peggy Lees. So I kind of naturally just fell into singing that kind of music. And also, having grown up with classical music, and my favorite movies growing up were like Singing in the Rain, Wizard of Oz, these like golden age films that had all these jazz standards built into them. So it was this middle world between pop and like new music and old that felt quite familiar to me. So that's kind of how I fell in love with it, and that's always been my favorite kind of music since.
Yeah, it's interesting you talking about that era, especially not just the music but of the movies, because the opening moments of this album with Dreamer and in that a cappella style, and I was thinking about the Andrews Sisters, that really came out. And I don't know if that was sort of you were pulling from that, but it at
I
least reminded me
absolutely
of that.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recorded that. I really wanted to kind of resemble that sound, the Andrews Sisters, Ink Spots, kind of Mills Brothers sound. And so we recorded it on this really cool like vintage microphone. It was like an Omni, it's called like an Omni microphone or something like that. But basically it's like, you probably know. And I recorded it was a 4-part harmony. I recorded each part on each side of the microphone 3 times. So I'd like do one part everywhere. So it kind of created this like almost circular sound. It feels like it's wrapping you around, but on like an old vintage microphone. And I think that's one of the ways you can get an old sound out of a new recording.
Yeah, the Andrews Sisters had only been so lucky, to have had that. I mean, they didn't need the technology, obviously, but
no, they had the voices. They didn't have to have one person walk around the microphone like me.
It's well done though, because I mean that was instant. That's what I got the image of in my head, and really kind of
great. Then I've achieved my goal there.
Now, I don't know if you think about an album in a linear way or not, but do you see that as a way to set up the record? Like, does that you're talking classical music, you have the overture, obviously. So do you see it in that sort of way?
Oh yeah, and for the album, I have Dreamer is kind of like the overture. It's the prelude, and the lyrics of that are like, no man's gonna pin me down, and I'm gonna go float away on my little cloud and like never talk to a boy again. And then I proceed to, of course, do that throughout the whole album. There's also an interlude, which is my first composition, which is very exciting.
Oh, nice.
And it's just an instrumental piece called the Nocturne, which is kind of a night poem and very inspired by some of my favorite classical composers. But it's really a medley of, I take the accompaniment of one song and the melody of another and kind of, layer it on top of each other and kind of see that as a way to tie it in.
Yeah, I love that you even put, I mean, not that, a lot of people don't put thought into the record, but thinking of it in such detail to make it work like that, and to tell.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, it connects to the first album as well. And I've been like quoting Misty all over my projects for a while. And then it ends with, having Misty in the album, and the way that the album's sequenced as well, like the story and musically, it's telling a story. I think it's something that is definitely meant to be consumed top to bottom.
Yeah. You mentioned Nocturne, and thinking that in the pairing of, well, the album title is called Bewitched, and you've got Haunted on here. And of course, that puts us in a different frame of mind, especially rolling into October around here with Halloween. What does that part of all of this mean and say?
Well, I'll start with saying that everything I do is very intentional. There are no accidents. Well, I knew it would be coming around fall. I also knew that I wanted it to be called Bewitched before I'd even written the song Bewitched, before I'd written any of the songs for the album, for that matter. I knew, what I wanted the visual world of Bewitched to be like as well. It was all kind of, I almost feel like I wrote a musical in that sense. I knew that Bewitched was going to be called Bewitched before I'd written any of the songs on the album, and I kind of like I kind of wrote a musical, I like to say, in that all of the songs are my personal stories, and I always found ways to tie them back, but I definitely, lay out a ton of words that were within the world of Bewitched that would either be titles or be woven into the songs. So it all kind of connects and tells a cohesive story. But, Haunted, Serendipity, Dreamer, Nocturne, all of these titles that kind of refer to some sort of bewitching evening, charm type of thing, were very, intentional.
That's really kind of incredible. I was even thinking that in the old standard, like that old Black Magic and stuff in there, it's like, again, just recalling the past.
Thing.
Yeah.
It's a very jazzy thing, and obviously you have standards like Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, and You Cast a Spell on Me, and I actually didn't do any of those songs in this album, but I think it's an inherently jazzy word, and I knew I wanted to write a love album. I knew I wanted it to be a love album, and I thought Bewitched was just the perfect word to kind of describe that confusing feeling of, being in love, but feeling like you have no control over it. It's more like someone's cast a spell on you.
Yeah. Now, I would ask, like, just because we're in that realm, knowing that it was coming out in the fall, knowing that you're going into it, like, is that also, it's a bit of a cheesy question, is that also like a favorite season of yours? I mean, are you drawn to that for a reason? That's what I'm getting at.
Not necessarily. I mean, yes, I love fall, and I think it's no surprise that I love fall. It's very, it's the jazziest season, really. There's no question of that. I think, I like to see, I think, it was a mixture of things that resulted in it being a fall album. I very much felt like my last album was a summer album, like a spring summer album. So I wanted to make a fall album, and the whole Bewitched theme kind of just tied perfectly into it. So
they're going to be asking you to write that Christmas record next.
And I am ready to do it because I love Christmas, and I love Christmas songs, because Christmas is the time of year that everyone listens to jazz.
It's true. That's true. That's true. I haven't thought of that. It's a shoe-in kind of a market, right?
Oh, absolutely. Christmas is my favorite time of year, and there will be no shortage of Christmas songs coming from me this year. I'll say that much.
Yeah. This it also brings to mind, knowing that you went to Berkeley, right? Berkeley College of Music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I know there's the music side. I would imagine there's probably the business side of that too. And this feels like you are adept at the marketing already, because that's
Yeah, well, I think to be a musician nowadays, you have to completely understand the ins and outs of your business, and you need to understand how to market yourself as a musician as well.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
What was your experience with Berkeley like? I mean, I hear about it in the terms like, I've heard some people just say how competitive it was. What was that like for you?
I think Berkeley was really good for me in that I'd come from such a classical background that Berkeley kind of allowed me to see beyond the rules of classical music. And it was kind of where I learned to, I was told to improvise for the first time, and I was told to, mix genres really. And I was in this, group of teenagers that were just making tons and tons of music and believing so much in it. And I that kind of love for music I'd never seen before. We were all kind of like robots in classical music, and of course we like loved it, but the kind of passion for music I was seeing at Berkeley it was very special. And so it was an interesting experience. I but I'm very thankful. Berkeley invested a lot in me. The reason I kind of was able to go and ended up going was because I received their presidential scholarship, which covered all the fees for all 4 years and all the tuition and everything. So, and it was a big honor, but I remember thinking like, I don't deserve this. I was like, they're just handing these out now, apparently. But they really saw something in me before I saw it in myself, and I don't take that for granted at all. And I graduated from the school, which is kind of a rare thing. People don't graduate very often from there. Actually, the saying goes that if you graduate, it means you didn't make it. So I guess I didn't make it, um, but I think it was a good place. It's a good place for kids that need a bit of a safety net for a little bit to experiment with music, and I needed that
Yeah.
safety nest for a bit.
Yeah.
So.
But obviously you've made it. And I will say that to I mean, what that's always a relative term in itself, made it, right? But seeing the success this year of From the Start and that track, has that, I mean, it feels like that's sort of become a runaway song in itself. And again, it's been one of my favorites this year. Has that been a surprise at all? I mean, what's that been like?
It's been very surprising. Yeah, I would never ever expect to see, this song that and for this album specifically, I really returned to my jazz and classical roots. Like my first album, I was kind of playing around with more pop sounds, kind of seeing how far I could poke into jazz and classical for and still appeal to my audience without losing, my very young audience. And then I found after that album cycle that, the fans, the music they loved the most were the songs that closely resembled jazz standards, and the songs that were literally recorded with a symphony orchestra. So I really leaned into that for this album. So, and From the Start was, a great example of that. I used everything is live instruments. We recorded it in the same way as you would have recorded a bossa nova song in the 60s. And I think to see that, chart and be on like the Spotify top 50 or reach any of it, get so much attention is really, really exciting just for the genre for me, but also I'm extremely surprised. But very honored, very honored. I think this is the first time, someone scatting has been, having this much attention.
Since the Scat Man. Beep, bop, bop, beep, bop. I haven't thought about that song in a million years, I swear. But you of course, I mean, in those lines, and I mean that she's so perfect, blah blah blah. Like we stood no chance. Of course, that was gonna get right into us. I mean, it's such a fun song. And but did I read right? Like you worked with one of my all-time favorite songwriters, Dan Wilson, on a track.
Did on the song Promise. I did two co-writes for the album, and one of them was with Dan, for Promise, which like is was crazy to me because Dan Wilson was also one of my favorite songwriters. I remember when my manager told me like, "Oh yeah, you have a day with Dan Wilson." I was like, "No way." I was like, "Kidding?" He's like written some of my favorite, chick songs and Taylor Swift and
Mhm.
Adele, like everything. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And it was wonderful, and it's one of my favorite songs that I've written.
Yeah.
Really, like just very surreal experience.
And he's such a master at the act of songwriting, and still, because that's like, I've had Dan on the show several times and was always a songwriting hero of mine, but to know that he meticulously thinks about the science of songwriting, but can still turn around and just do Closing Time 25 years ago, but just he makes it look so easy to write a pop rock song. Even on this new Semisonic album, it's the same way. Like, he hasn't lost that, you know?
Yeah, it's truly incredible. He really is. Out of the people I've written with thus far, it's really, you can tell he's a master, and made me feel very, very comfortable. And I came in, and the song was wrote itself almost. It came out so quickly, and yeah,
Yeah.
excited
Well,
for.
yeah. And then you get to the, towards the end of the record, and you hit Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self, which seems like a poignant moment that, a lot of us think about, if we could talk. What brought that one on?
That one I wrote because I was thinking just about, I was kind of reflecting on the past year, and just thinking about how many cool things I've gotten to do, and thinking about how, when I was 13, I would have never ever dreamed that I could do things like this. And I was kind of an awkward kid, and I didn't talk to boys, and I was very foreign. I'm half Chinese, and growing up in Iceland it's a very homogenous country. So I felt very foreign, and I felt very loud. And I was like an orchestra kid, and like I just didn't, I was like a very, I cared a lot about grades and stuff. I felt like the odd one out, and I felt very loud, and I wanted to be a singer, but I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't think it was possible. I didn't feel like I was really like good enough or pretty enough. And I just wish I could go back to my 13-year-old self and just tell her that everything's going to be okay. And even though people make fun of your name now, like in a couple of years you'll be up on stage and other little girls will be screaming your name. Like, that's one of the lyrics. When I wrote that song, I cried the entire time. Like, I was crying so much, just because I don't know, it really brought out some sort of emotion in me. And I really hope that, I'm sure there's some younger girls who follow me, and listen to me, and see this. This, now I get to like travel the world, and I get to wear cool clothes, and do photo shoots, and and write about these perfect romantic stories. And I just hope that they can listen to this song and think, oh, she felt like that too when she was 13. So
Yeah, I love that. What a powerful moment, seriously. And it says so much about, of course, again, the success that you've landed with here. That's all warranted. This record is so good. I'm really, now knowing everything that went into this, I can't wait to hear where you take this story further, on the next records, and whatever Christmas time comes along as well.
well, the
Libby,
one thing about Christmas is it's gonna come.
yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me. It's very, very exciting.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All three of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.